Don't try to gaslight her, Mom. My daughter said this while my 8-year-old granddaughter accused me of abuse that never happened. Grandma, I remember now what you did to me in the basement. Lily's voice was rehearsed, coached. Her stepfather's words in her small mouth. The morning light caught the dust motes floating between us, and for a moment, everything seemed suspended. The coffee growing cold in my hands, the tick of the wall clock, my own breathing. Her younger brother, Mason, only 6, nodded beside her with the rehearsed certainty of a child who'd been told what to think. His small fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth, avoiding my eyes. My daughter, Jennifer, stood in the doorway behind them, her arms crossed, her expression harder than I'd ever seen it in 38 years of being her mother. Lily, I said, and my voice came out strange. Finn, sweetheart, what are you talking about? What basement? Your basement. She said it like she was reciting from a script. Where you took me when Mommy wasn't looking. Where you did bad things. The kitchen I'd cooked 10,000 meals in suddenly felt alien. The yellow walls I'd painted myself. The checkered curtains I'd sewn when Jennifer was still in high school. All of it tilting sideways. Jennifer, I looked past my grandchildren to my daughter. What is this? What's happening? Don't try to gaslight her, Mom. Jennifer's voice was ice. Drew warned me you'd do this. Try to make her doubt herself. Drev. Of course, Drev. That was 3 months ago. I haven't been allowed to see my grandchildren since. Haven't heard Lily's laugh, or felt Mason's small hand slip into mine. Haven't read them bedtime stories or watched them blow out birthday candles or done any of the 1,000 small sacred things that grandmothers do. But to understand how I ended up here, barred from my own family, accused of horrors I never committed, watching my daughter choose her husband's lies over 38 years of being her mother, you need to know about Drew. You need to know how a monster can hide behind a warm smile and a master's degree. Drew Richardson came into our lives 6 years ago at Jennifer's friend's wedding. I remember the exact moment I first saw him, standing by the bar in a well-fitted gray suit, listening intently to someone's story with his head slightly tilted, nodding at all the right moments. He had warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. A salt and pepper beard, neatly trimmed. Presence that made you feel like the most interesting person in the room when he turned his attention to you. You must be Jennifer's mother, he'd said, extending his hand. His handshake was firm, but not aggressive. She's told me so much about you. The way she talks about you, I can tell you were an incredible mom. I was charmed. God help me, I was charmed. He had a master's degree in clinical psychology and what seemed like genuine affection for my daughter. He was thoughtful. Attentive. He remembered everyone's coffee order and asked follow-up questions about things you'd mentioned weeks before. The kind of son-in-law who helps with dishes without being asked and sends thank you notes for birthday gifts. At family dinners, he'd compliment my cooking with specific observations. Barbara, is that rosemary in the potatoes? Really brings out the earthiness of the lamb. Sick. I thought we were lucky. I thought Jennifer had finally found someone worthy of her. She'd been through a difficult divorce when the kids were toddlers. Her first husband, Marcus, had been charming but unreliable, the kind of man who promised the world and delivered disappointment. He'd missed Lily's first birthday for a poker game, forgotten Mason's name at a party, calling him Buddy when pressed by other parents. Eventually left for a younger woman he'd met at his gym. Drew seemed like the opposite in every way. Stable, present. He'd even started his own therapy practice specializing in childhood trauma, which Jennifer said made him especially good with Lily and Mason as they navigated having a stepdad. He's so patient with them, Mom. She'd tell me during our weekly coffee dates, back when we still had those. We'd meet at the little cafe on Brenner Street with the crooked paintings on the walls, and she'd stir her latte while telling me about her new life. He really listens. Like, actually listens. Adults just talk at kids, but he's teaching them to identify and express their feelings. That sounds wonderful, I said. And I meant it. Last week, Lily had a meltdown about having to share her toys. And instead of just sending her to her room, Drew sat with her for 20 minutes, helped her name what she was feeling, validated her experience while still setting boundaries. Jennifer's eyes were shining. I never had that growing up, you know? That kind of emotional attunement. I didn't point out that I'd done my best with what I knew at the time. That parenting in the 1980s didn't come with the vocabulary Jennifer was using now. I was just happy she was happy. I was grateful Drew had stepped up. The first time I noticed something off was about a year after they married. A Tuesday afternoon in late October, leaves skittering across the sidewalk as I walked up their front steps. I'd stopped by to drop off some books I'd found for Lily. She was going through a dinosaur phase, and I discovered a beautiful illustrated encyclopedia at an estate sale, heavy and cloth-bound, with paintings so vivid the pterodactyls seemed ready to fly off the page. The kind of thing that made me think of her immediately the way grandmothers do. The way we see our grandchildren in everything beautiful and want to bring pieces of the world back to them. Drew answered the door. Jennifer was at work, but he'd taken the afternoon off to watch the kids. He was wearing a cardigan and slippers, looking every inch the comfortable stepfather. "Oh, Barbara," he said, and there was something in his tone. Not quite disappointed, but close. A subtle flattening of warmth. "Did Jennifer know you were coming by?" The question caught me off guard. In the 2 years since he'd joined our family, I'd never needed permission to visit my grandchildren. "I was just in the neighborhood," I said, holding up the book. "Found this for Lily. I can leave it with you if now's not a good time." He didn't step aside to let me in. Didn't offer coffee or suggest I come see the kids for a few minutes, blocking my view of the house I'd helped Jennifer move into. "It's not that it's a bad time," he said, and his voice was still pleasant. "Reasonable. It's just we're really trying to be intentional about the kids' routine. Unexpected visitors can be disruptive, even when they're family." He paused. "Especially when they're family, actually. Attachment patterns and all that." He smiled when he said it. Kind, reasonable, like he was doing me a favor by explaining. I handed him the book and left. In the car, I sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, trying to name the feeling in my chest. It wasn't quite hurt, more like confusion, a sense that something had shifted beneath my feet without warning. Later, when I mentioned it to Jennifer, she'd laughed it off. "He's probably right, Mom. They do get overstimulated. You know how Lily gets." I did know how Lily got. I'd been the one taking care of her 2 days a week since she was born, while Jennifer worked. Know when she needed space and when she needed holding. I knew that she got overstimulated by too much noise, not too much love. But I didn't push it. I told myself I was overreacting. That Drew knew what he was talking about. He was the professional, after all. That was my first mistake. Looking back now, I can see the pattern beginning. The gentle corrections. The professional terminology that made everything sound clinical and therefore true. The way he'd reframe any concern I had as my anxiety or overstepping, never as his control. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Memory is like that, isn't it? It wants to skip to the important parts, to the moments that changed everything. But sometimes you need to sit in the slow accumulation of small things. The death by 1,000 cuts that you don't recognize as dying until the blood is already pooled at your feet. The visits became more scheduled after that October afternoon. I couldn't just drop by anymore. I needed to check the family calendar first, then be more organized, and wasn't it nice to have some structure? "We're using this app now," she explained, showing me her phone. "Everyone inputs their schedule, and then you can see at a glance when there might be availability. It just makes things run smoother." Availability? Like I was booking an appointment. Like my grandchildren were clients. The kids seemed fine during the visits I was permitted. Happy, even. Lily still ran to hug me when I arrived, still chattered about school and her friends and whatever animal she was currently obsessed with. We'd moved on from dinosaurs to dolphins, and I'd found her a documentary about ocean life that she watched 3 times in a row. Mason, quieter by nature, would sometimes sit in my lap while I read to him. He smelled like maple syrup and crayon wax, and he'd trace the illustrations with one finger while I turned the pages. His breathing would slow as the story went on, his small body relaxing against mine with the absolute trust that only children can give. Those afternoons felt sacred, like I was storing them up for some future drought. Maybe part of me already knew. I should have paid more attention to the questions Drew started asking. They were casual at first, slipped in during family dinners between passing the salt and complimenting the meal. He'd bring up something about childhood development, some study he'd read in a professional journal. Barbara, did you use any particular parenting philosophy with Jennifer? I'm curious about generational approaches to discipline. I laughed, uncomfortable with being suddenly in the spotlight. I don't know if I'd call it a philosophy. Mostly just tried to love her and keep her from burning the house down. He smiled. That warm, crinkly smile. But you must have had some structure. Consequences for misbehavior? Time-outs mostly. Took away privileges when she was older. Usual. Did you ever use physical punishment? Jennifer would look up at this, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth, and I'd feel suddenly defensive. The air in the room thickening. I spanked her maybe 3 times in 18 years. I'm not proud of it, but it was a different time. No judgment, Drew would say, hands up in that universal gesture of surrender. Just trying to understand the full picture of her childhood. It helps me support her better now. It all sounded so reasonable, so well-intentioned. The questions of a curious professional who wanted to help. I didn't notice how they escalated. The questions continued over months, always framed as curiosity, as professional interest. Always asked with that same warm smile and those crinkly eyes. Did I have a temper when Jennifer was young? Had I struggled with postpartum depression? What was my relationship like with my own mother? Had there been any addiction in the family? How did I handle conflict in my marriage? Were there times I felt overwhelmed and acted in ways I regretted? I answered honestly because I had nothing to hide. Yes, I'd had some hard days as a new mother, who hasn't? No, I'd never been formally diagnosed with anything, but the 70s weren't big on mental health care for women anyway. My mother had been cold and critical, and I'd worked hard to be different with Jennifer. My father had been a drinker, but he'd quit when I was 12 after my mother threatened to leave. I told him about the fights, infrequent but intense, that my husband Tom and I had before we learned to communicate better. About the year Jennifer was 5, and I was so exhausted from work and caregiving that I'd sometimes cry in the bathroom after she went to bed. About my mother's disappointment that I'd wasted my education by becoming a social worker instead of a lawyer. Drew would nod thoughtfully at each revelation, like he was filing everything away. Taking notes for some future reference, which I now understand he was. About 8 months before Lily's accusation at my kitchen table, Drew suggested family therapy. I was doing dishes after Sunday dinner when Jennifer mentioned it, her voice careful. Rehearsed. Drew and I are going to start doing some sessions together, she said. Just the 2 of us. Nothing to do with you, Mom. I turned from the sink, soap suds dripping from my hands. Okay. Is everything all right between you 2? Oh, we're fine. She waved her hand dismissively. It's just, Drew thinks it might help me to talk through some stuff from my childhood. You know, with a professional. With him? He's your husband. He's also a trained therapist, and he knows me better than anyone. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He says, even good mothers make mistakes, and it's okay to acknowledge that. Something cold settled in my stomach. A heaviness I couldn't name. What mistakes? I kept my voice light. It's not about blame, Mom. It's about understanding patterns, like how you could be kind of controlling when I was growing up, making decisions for me without asking what I wanted. I was your mother. That's what mothers do. See, that's the kind of thing we're working on. Her voice sharpened. The defensiveness. The way you can't hear anything without making it about you. I didn't know what to say to that. Against being called defensive? Every word proves the accusation. I finished the dishes in silence. The distance grew after that conversation. Our weekly coffee dates became every other week, then monthly, then stopped altogether. Jennifer was busy. The kids had activities. Drew thought it might be good to have some space while they worked through things. I tried not to panic. I told myself it was normal, that families go through phases. Jennifer was 40 years old. She didn't need to have coffee with her mother every week. I was being clingy. Needy. All the things Drew implied without quite saying. But Lily and Mason, I missed them with a physical ache. It was a constant presence, that missing. A weight in my chest that never quite lifted. I'd wake at night and think about them. Wonder what they were dreaming. Whether Mason still had his nightlight shaped like a moon. Whether Lily was still sleeping with the stuffed elephant I'd given her for her 5th birthday. I have to walk away quickly, blinking hard. I'd drive past playgrounds and scan the children for their faces. I started keeping a calendar where I marked off the days since I'd last seen them, watching the numbers climb with a growing dread. When I finally pushed back, called Jennifer and asked point blank when I could see my grandchildren, she got quiet. The silence stretched so long I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Mom, Drew thinks," she started, and I felt my jaw tighten at those 2 words that had started to precede everything. Drew thinks, Drew says, Drew believes, as if her own thoughts had been replaced by his. Drew thinks it might be good to take a break for a bit, just until we finish processing some things. Processing what things? Jennifer, they're my grandchildren. Haven't seen them in 6 weeks. And they're my children, Mom. Her voice went cold. I need you to respect that Drew and I are making decisions in their best interest. Grandmother, their best interest is not being around someone who might be harmful to their development. The word harmful hit me like a slap. I actually took a step backward, as if the word had physical force. What are you talking about? But she wouldn't elaborate. Just said they'd be in touch when they were ready, and hung up. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that call, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence where my daughter's voice had been. The late afternoon light was turning golden, that honeyed autumn light that had always made me think of family dinners and apple picking and the particular smell of children's hair after a day spent playing outside. Now it just made me think of everything I was losing. That was 2 months before Lily's accusation. 2 months of me trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, replaying every interaction, every visit, every conversation, analyzing my own memories with the intensity of an archaeologist sifting through ruins. Had I said something wrong at Thanksgiving? Been too pushy about the kids' bedtimes? Overstepped some boundary I couldn't see? I called Jennifer. Voicemail. Again, voicemail. I texted. Got short, cold responses that felt automated, respecting our boundaries right now. We'll be in touch when we're ready. Please stop calling. I sent cards to the kids, cheerful notes with stickers and drawings, telling them I loved them and was thinking of them. They came back unopened. Return to sender stamped across the address in accusatory red ink. I stopped sleeping through the night. Would wake at 3 a.m. with my mind racing, going over and over the same ground. Some nights I'd get up and sit at my computer, looking at old photos of the kids. Lily's gap-toothed grin at the pumpkin patch. Mason's serious face as he concentrated on a Lego tower. The 3 of us at the beach, sandy and sunburned and laughing. I'd press my hand to the screen like I could reach through it. Touch them one more time. I started seeing a therapist myself. Not Drew, obviously, doctor. Hair and reading glasses, she was always losing. She came recommended by my doctor, who'd noticed my weight loss and sleeplessness at my annual physical. You're under significant stress, he'd said, concern in his eyes. Whatever's going on, Barbara, you need someone to talk to. I chose Dr. Chen because she wasn't affiliated with any of the professional groups Drew belonged to. I'd done my research, made sure their circles didn't overlap. Even then, I was becoming careful in ways I hadn't been before. In her warm office with its mismatched furniture and overflowing bookshelves, I told her everything. The escalating distance, Vague accusations. The way Drew seemed to be at the center of it all, pulling strings I couldn't see. It sounds like you're being isolated, Doctor, Jen said gently. She had a way of leaning forward when she spoke, as if what you said was the most important thing she'd ever heard. The accusations are very vague. Has your daughter given you any specific examples of harmful behavior? No, just that Drew thinks I'm harmful, that I might damage the children. And Drew is a therapist. Yes, specializes in childhood trauma. Who is married to your daughter and treating her as a client. She said it flatly, but I heard the implication. Is that allowed? Ethically? Absolutely not. Doctor. Chen tapped her pen against her notepad, a habit she had when thinking. Dual relationships are prohibited in every therapeutic code of ethics. You cannot treat your own family members. The power dynamics are too complicated. The objectivity impossible. Legally, it's more complex. He could argue it's informal support, not formal treatment. So what do I do? Barbara, I want you to document everything. Her voice was firm now, the gentleness replaced by urgency. Dates, times, conversations. Every text, every email, every returned card. This escalates. You'll need a record. I thought she was being paranoid. A little dramatic, even. This was my daughter we were talking about. My grandchildren. Legal dispute. She wasn't being paranoid. She was being prescient. The call came on a Tuesday morning, early enough that the sun was still climbing and I was still in my bathrobe. Jennifer's voice was shaking. Mom, the kids have been having nightmares. Memories are coming up. I need to talk. Hope flared stupidly in my chest. After months of silence, she wanted to talk. Maybe this was the beginning of fixing things. Maybe she'd realized Drew was wrong, that she missed me, that the kids needed their grandmother. Of course. When? I can come over right now. No, not at the house. A pause. Drew thinks it should be neutral territory. Can you meet us at the coffee shop on Brenner Street? Tomorrow at 10? The same coffee shop where we'd had our weekly dates? Where I'd listened to Jennifer talk about Drew's patience with the kids, his emotional attunement, how lucky she felt. It felt pointed now, a statement. I barely slept that night, kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd apologize for whatever I'd done wrong. I'd be understanding, patient. I'd show her I could change, even though I didn't know what I was supposed to be changing. I arrived 15 minutes early and ordered tea I didn't drink. Sat at a table by the window watching for Jennifer's car. Hands trembled slightly as I smoothed my blouse. I dressed carefully, not too formal, not too casual. Approachable, non-threatening. God, the things we do when we're desperate. When Jennifer came in with Drew, his hand on the small of her back, protective and possessive in a way I was only now learning to recognize, I understood this wasn't reconciliation. The way she wouldn't meet my eyes. The way he guided her to the table like she might bolt. The leather notebook he carried like this was a therapy session instead of a conversation between a mother and daughter. They sat across from me, a united front. Jennifer's hands were clasped on the table so tightly her knuckles were white. Drew set his notebook down, pulled a pen from his pocket, and wrote something at the top of a page. The voice I now recognized as his therapist voice. The one that made everything sound like care while it cut you to pieces. Thank you for meeting with us. This is difficult, but it's important we have this conversation. What's going on? Jennifer said the kids are having nightmares. They are, Jennifer said, and her voice was thick. She still wouldn't look at me. About you. The world tilted. The coffee shop with its exposed brick and chalkboard menu and morning crowd of laptop workers suddenly felt like a dream, like I'd stepped out of reality into something wrong. About me? Drew leaned forward. Over the past few months, working with Jennifer on some of her childhood experiences, some concerning patterns emerged. When we explored them more deeply, it became clear that there might be some unresolved trauma from her childhood. And as we created a safe space for that exploration, Lily and Mason started having their own recollections. Recollections of what? Each word measured. When they felt unsafe. When discipline became excessive. I looked at Jennifer. Really looked at her. This woman I'd raised from a squalling infant, walked the floors with during colic, held through nightmares and breakups and childbirth. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, folded in on herself. You think I hurt them? I don't know what to think anymore, Mom. Her voice broke on the word Mom. Lily's been having nightmares about the basement. She wakes up screaming, says you took her down there when Mommy wasn't looking. Mason won't talk about it, but he gets upset whenever we mention your house. Starts crying and saying he doesn't want to go. My basement? I heard my own voice rising and struggled to control it. Jennifer, it's finished. It's where we do puzzles, where I keep the art supplies. There's a couch down there and good lighting, and the kids have always loved it. They begged to go down there. Exactly, Drew said, like I'd proven his point. An isolated space, away from observation, away from parents. Classic grooming behavior, Barbara. Create a secret space, a special place just for you and the children. Make them feel chosen. Grooming behavior? The words came out too loud. An elderly couple at the next table glanced over, and I forced myself to lower my voice. I'm her grandmother. I've been taking care of those children since they were born. And that's part of what we're unpacking, Drew said. He'd opened his notebook now, was writing something. The enmeshment. The boundary violations. The way you inserted yourself into the parenting dynamic from day one. Jennifer asked me to help. She needed childcare. She was a single mother working full-time. And you used that access, Drew said quietly, his voice never rising, always that measured calm, to create dependency. Position yourself as irreplaceable in their lives, to become the primary attachment figure instead of their mother. It's actually a very common pattern in generational trauma. Grandmother who can't let go, who needs to be needed. I felt like I was drowning, like the air in the coffee shop had turned to water and I was trying to breathe through it. This is insane. Jennifer, you know me. You know I would never. I thought I knew you, she said. And she was crying now, tears running down her cheeks, her voice thick and broken. But Drew's helped me see things I'd normalized, things I'd buried. Way you'd lock me in my room as punishment. The way you'd withhold affection when I disappointed you. The way you'd... She stopped, pressed her hand to her mouth. The way I... What? Jennifer, what are you talking about? I never locked you in your room. You don't remember because you've rewritten the narrative, Drew said. He'd put his pen down, was looking at me with something like sympathy, which was worse than anger would have been. Abusers often do. It's not necessarily intentional, Barbara. The mind protects itself from the knowledge of harm it's caused. But Jennifer's memories are real. They've been validated through months of careful therapeutic work. And now that the children are in a safe environment, away from your influence, their own memories are surfacing too. Safe environment? Without me, you mean? Without exposure to someone who may have harmed them, yes. I stood up. The chair scraped loud against the floor. Elderly couple was staring openly now, and I didn't care. I won't listen to this. Jennifer, please. Think about what you're saying. You're my daughter. I love you. I love those children. I have loved them every day of their lives. I know you do, she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. That's what makes this so hard. That's what made it so confusing for so long. But Drew says love doesn't erase harm. Sometimes the people who love us the most are the ones who hurt us the worst. What harm? What specifically am I supposed to have done? They exchanged a look. Some wordless communication passed between them. Drew's hand moved to cover Jennifer's on the table. We're not here to litigate details, he said. That's not therapeutic for anyone. We're here to set a boundary. Jennifer and I have decided, for the safety and well-being of Lily and Mason, that unsupervised contact with you isn't appropriate right now. Unsupervised? You think I need supervision to see my grandchildren? We think, Drew said, his voice maddeningly, infuriatingly calm, that no contact is best until we've worked through this as a family. With professional support, I want to talk to them. To Lily and Mason. Let me ask them myself what they remember. Absolutely not, Jennifer said, and there was steel in her voice I'd never heard before, a hardness that wasn't her. You are not going to interrogate traumatized children. That's exactly the kind of behavior Drew's been helping me recognize. The way you always have to be in control, have to manage everything. Can't let anyone else. That's enough, Jenny, Drew said softly, using the nickname I'd given her as a baby. The intimacy of it in his mouth made my skin crawl. Your mother understands. Don't you, Barbara? Chickenpox and bad breakups and the brutal aftermath of her first marriage, held while she sobbed after the divorce, helped with the babies when she was so exhausted she could barely stand, and saw a stranger. So this is it? I said. You're just cutting me out? Based on what, bad dreams and Drew's theories? Based on a pattern of emotional abuse that I'm only now able to name, Jennifer said. Based on memories I've spent my whole life burying. Based on my children's trauma that I will not let you inflict on another generation. And there it was. Drew had given her the language, the framework, the permission to rewrite 38 years of our history into something dark and damaging. He'd taken my daughter's ordinary childhood, imperfect but loving, difficult at times but safe, and turned it into a narrative of abuse. I left without finishing my tea. The cup sat there, cold and untouched, as I walked out into the morning sun. Behind me, I heard Drew saying something soft and soothing to Jennifer, comforting her, the monster, comforting my daughter for the pain of losing her mother. The months that followed were the worst of my life. Worse than my husband Tom's death from a sudden heart attack 12 years ago. Worse than my own mother's slow decline into dementia. Worse than anything I'd ever imagined I'd have to endure. I learned what it feels like to be erased from your own family. To send birthday cards that get returned unopened. Returned to sender stamped across your careful handwriting like a verdict. To drive past the playground where you used to push your grandchildren on the swings and wonder if they even remember you. To wonder if their memories of you are being actively rewritten. Some nights I'd wake at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and lie in the dark, imagining what Drew might be telling them. What scenes he was painting in their minds with his careful questions and guided visualizations. Was he teaching Lily to see me as a monster? Was he making Mason afraid of the grandmother who'd rocked him through colic and taught him to count? I'd imagine them in his office, because surely he had an office in the house, a room where he did this work, sitting on child-sized chairs while he asked them leading questions. And when you think about Grandma's basement, Lily, what do you feel in your body? I don't know. Nothing? Nothing at all? Close your eyes. Really try to feel it. Sometimes our bodies remember things before our minds do. I'd lie in bed and imagine this, tears running down my temples into my hair, and feel something like madness circling at the edges of my mind. Chen recommended I consult a family attorney. You might have grandparent visitation rights, she said, especially given the abruptness of the cutoff and the length of your previous relationship with the children. Can they really just take my grandchildren away? Just like that? They can try, but you don't have to accept it. The attorney, a brisk woman named Lisa Huang, with sharp eyes and a handshake like a trap, reviewed my situation with the kind of expression that told me she'd seen worse, but not by much. Here's the problem, she said, spreading documents across her desk. Grandparent rights in this state are limited. Very limited. You'd have to prove that denying you access is harmful to the children. And if your daughter and her husband claim there's been abuse, there hasn't been. I believe you. She said it simply, directly, and I felt tears prick my eyes. How long since anyone had just believed me? But they can make this very difficult, especially with him being a licensed therapist. Courts give a lot of weight to mental health professionals. They present as experts, objective, caring about the children's welfare. So I just have to accept this? Just let him keep my grandchildren from me forever? I didn't say that. She smiled, and there was something fierce in it. I said it's difficult. Not impossible. We could file a petition for visitation. It would force them to present evidence of this alleged harm. Make them prove their case instead of just asserting it. She paused, her eyes serious. You to be prepared for what that might look like. For your grandchildren to potentially testify. For your daughter to stand in court and detail what she believes you did. Believes, not what I actually did. The law deals with allegations and evidence, not absolute truth. If they can make a convincing case, they can't, because I didn't do anything. She nodded slowly. Then we build our case. Document everything. Save every text, every email, every returned card. If you have photos or videos that show positive interactions with the kids, preserve those. Witnesses who can attest to your relationship with them. We need to build a counter-narrative. Show the court who you really are. I started going through my phone that night. 5 years of photos. Lily and Mason and me at the zoo, Mason on my shoulders pointing at the giraffes. At the park, Lily pumping her legs on the swing while I stood behind her. Baking cookies, both kids covered in flour, grinning at the camera. Reading stories, Mason asleep on my shoulder, Lily following along with her finger under the words. Lily's gap-toothed grin as she held up a drawing she'd made me, a crayon picture of our family, with me in the middle, taller than everyone else, labeled Grandma in wobbly letters. Mason asleep on my shoulder during a movie, his thumb in his mouth, completely at peace. My hands shook as I backed everything up to 3 different places. External hard drive, cloud storage, email to myself. I couldn't stop thinking about Drew on his computer, writing his notes, documenting his lies. I needed to be just as thorough. I needed to be better. The next morning, I called my sister Rachel in Phoenix. She's 4 years older than me, sharper-tongued and less patient, the kind of woman who says exactly what she thinks and doesn't apologize for it. She'd driven me crazy growing up, with her bossiness and her certainty that she was always right. But she's always been in my corner. Always. Let me get this straight, she said after I'd explained everything, my voice breaking multiple times as I talked. Patient, which is unethical as all hell, and has convinced her that you abused her and the grandkids? And nobody, not Jennifer, not her friends, not anyone, thinks this is even slightly suspicious? Jennifer doesn't see it that way. She thinks he's helping her heal. Heal from what? You were a good mother, Barb. Not perfect, but who the hell is? You think I don't remember? I was there, at Jennifer's school plays, never missing a single one. Soccer games, sitting in the rain. Sitting up with her when she had nightmares about monsters under the bed. Staying up all night helping her with science projects. This is gaslighting on a massive scale. It was the first time someone had used that word. Gaslighting. It fit so perfectly, it made me dizzy. But what can I do? She's an adult. I can't force her to see reason. No, but you can fight for those kids. And you need to start by finding out what Drew's been telling them. What exactly he's putting in their heads. How am I supposed to do that? I can't even see them. Rachel was quiet for a moment. I could hear her thinking. She'd always done this, gone silent when she was working something out. Do they still go to Oakmont Elementary? As far as I know. And you still have that friend who volunteers in the library there? Carol? Carol Sanders, yes. But Rachel, I can't ask her to spy on my grandchildren. It's not spying to check on children's welfare. There's a difference between stalking and making sure they're okay. I didn't call Carol. The thought of it felt wrong, felt like crossing some line I couldn't uncross. But I did, just once, drive past the school at pickup time, just to see them, just to know they were okay. I parked across the street, behind a minivan, and watched the doors open at 3:15. Children spilled out in a flood of backpacks and lunchboxes and shouted conversations. And there they were. Lily, with her backpack covered in dinosaur pins she'd never taken off, even after moving on to dolphins. Her hair in the braids I used to do for her, the one she said made her feel like a princess. Mason, holding hands with another little boy, laughing at something. His shoelaces were untied. I felt an absurd urge to run across the street and tie them. They looked fine, happy even. No trauma visible in their posture or their play. Drew pulled up in his expensive SUV, and I watched him kneel down to their height, saying something that made them both laugh. Lily threw her arms around his neck. Mason did a little dance of excitement about something. The perfect stepfather. The perfect monster. I pulled away before he could see me. My hands were shaking so badly I had to pull over a block later and sit until they stopped. Chen and I talked about a lot of things over the next few weeks. Grief. Anga. The particular hell of being accused of something you didn't do and having no way to prove your innocence. The thing about false accusations, she said one session, leaning forward in her chair, is that they put you in an impossible position. If you defend yourself too vigorously, you look defensive. Guilty. Protesting too much. If you don't defend yourself enough, silence becomes admission. So what do? You keep living your life. She said it gently but firmly. You stay connected to the people who know you, who can remind you who you are. You don't let this consume you. You don't let him win by destroying you before the court case even starts. Easier said than done, but I tried. I went back to my book club, where I'd been absent for months. We met at Denise's house, the same living room where we'd discussed novels for 15 years. The same women who'd seen me through Tom's death and Jennifer's divorce and 100 smaller crises. Denise took one look at me when I walked in. I'd lost weight, I knew. My clothes hung differently and pulled me aside into her kitchen. Barbara, where have you been? We've been worried sick. June was about to call the police and demand a welfare check. I told her a simplified version. Family trouble, cut off from the grandkids, can't get into details because of legal issues. She hugged me fiercely, her arms strong around my shoulders. Those kids are lucky to have you, she said. Whatever's going on, don't you forget that. Don't you let anyone tell you different. I wanted to believe her. Some days I almost could. At home that night, I found myself going through old videos on my laptop. Jennifer's high school graduation, her mortarboard slightly askew, grinning at the camera. Her wedding to her first husband, young and hopeful in white lace. The day she brought Lily home from the hospital and placed that tiny, perfect person in my arms for the first time. I'd held my first grandchild and felt something crack open in my chest. Love so big it hurt. And I'd promised her, silently, fiercely, that I'd always be there. That I'd protect her from anything. Some promises, apparently, other people get to break for you. I was in the middle of a video of Mason's third birthday party, him covered in chocolate cake, giggling uncontrollably as I tried to wipe his face when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd gotten wary of unknown numbers. Is this Barbara Mitchell? Yes? My name is Claire Sorensen. I'm a caseworker with Child Protective Services. My heart stopped. Actually stopped, then lurched back into a rapid, painful beat. What? Why are you calling me? We received a report concerning your grandchildren, Lily and Mason Richardson. The report alleges a history of physical and emotional abuse during periods of unsupervised care. I need to ask you some questions. Of course, Drew would escalate to CPS. Build the paper trail. Make it official. Get government documentation of his lies. I never hurt those children, I said. And I hated how defensive I sounded, how desperate. Exactly what Dr. Chen had warned about. I have never laid a hand on them in anger. I have never done anything but love them. I understand this is difficult, Miss Mitchell. The caseworker's voice was carefully neutral. I'm just trying to gather information. Can you tell me about your relationship with your grandchildren? I told her everything. We're infants. The activities we'd shared, the puzzles and books and baking and park trips. The absolute impossibility of what I was being accused of. I heard myself rambling, over-explaining, and couldn't stop. She listened without comment, asked clarifying questions, gave nothing away. And you've had no contact with the children for approximately 3 months? Their parents won't allow it? I've been completely cut off. A pause. Papers rustling. And has there been any prior CPS involvement with this family? Not that I'm aware of. There's never been any reason. These are loved, well cared for children. Okay, I appreciate your cooperation, Miss Mitchell. Someone will likely be in touch for a follow-up investigation. She hung up. I sat there in my living room, surrounded by years of happy memories frozen on my laptop screen, contradicted by someone's cruel fiction, and finally let myself cry. Great, racking sobs that tore through me like storms. Left. Then I sat in the aftermath, exhausted and empty, and waited for whatever would come next. The CPS investigation went nowhere. Insufficient evidence? Case closed after 2 weeks of interviews and home visits, but the damage was done. Now there was a record, an official report, even if unsubstantiated, a file with my name on it, accessible forever, something Drew could point to if needed. Say it. Even the authorities were concerned enough to investigate. Lisa Huang filed the petition for grandparent visitation. Jennifer and Drew's attorney, they had an attorney now, a slick man in expensive suits, responded with a counterclaim so vicious it left me breathless. 20 pages detailing my alleged abuse. Specific incidents I had no memory of because they'd never happened. Jennifer's recovered memories of my temper, my manipulation, my controlling behavior. The time I supposedly locked her in a closet for hours. The time I allegedly slapped her for spilling milk. The time I purportedly told her she was worthless and would never amount to anything. None of it had happened. Not one moment of it. And 2 affidavits from Lily and Mason, dictated to Drew and transcribed in his neat handwriting, describing things I'd supposedly done in my basement. Things that made me physically ill to read, that I had to put down and walk away from before I could finish. This is going to get ugly, Lisa warned when she called me. They're playing hardball. He knows exactly what he's doing, Barbara. This is a coordinated strategy. Can they do this? Just lie? In legal documents? They can allege anything they want. We'll have to disprove it in court. But I need to prepare you. Children's testimony, even coach testimony, carries enormous weight with judges. And Drew's their stepfather and a licensed therapist. He'll present as credible. Concerned, just trying to protect his family. So what do? We find an expert witness. Someone who can explain to the judge how false memories work, how suggestible children are, how someone with Drew's training could easily manipulate them. We fight fire with fire. She found Dr. Richard Foster, a psychologist from the university who'd written extensively on false memory syndrome and parental alienation. He agreed to review the case, and after 2 weeks of going through everything, the timeline, the allegations, Drew's credentials and methods, my documentation of our relationship with them, he called me himself. Miss Mitchell, I've reviewed all your materials carefully. His voice was grave but kind. I want to be very clear with you. What you're describing is a textbook case of manufactured abuse allegations. The pattern is unmistakable. So you believe me? I believe the evidence. The sudden onset of memories after months of therapeutic sessions, the escalating narrative that grows more detailed and more damning over time, the systematic isolation of the target, you, from the family, the use of suggestive questioning and guided visualization with young, impressionable children. Your son-in-law has essentially conducted an unethical implantation protocol. Implantation protocol. Such clinical words for something so devastating. Can you prove that in court? Not definitively without examining the children myself, which opposing counsel will never allow. But I can provide expert testimony about the methods and their known effects. I can explain to a judge how easily children can be led to believe events that never occurred, especially by someone they trust and see as an authority. I can demonstrate that what Drew documented in his own notes matches known manipulation techniques. It felt like the first hope I'd had in months, a crack of light in the darkness. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. Lisa prepared me for what to expect, for seeing Jennifer and Drew, for possibly seeing the children, for hearing terrible things said about me under oath. Don't react, she coached. Whatever they say, however outrageous the lies, you stay calm. You don't cry, don't argue, don't get angry. Kept from them. Let their story have holes. Let them look like the extremists making wild accusations without evidence. I practiced being stone-faced in the mirror, practiced breathing through panic, through rage, through grief, practiced hearing terrible things about myself and not flinching. I didn't practice for what actually happened. 3 days before the hearing, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers at 2 a.m. are never good news. But something made me pick up, groggy and disoriented, still half in a dream about Lily. Barbara? It's Jennifer. I sat up so fast I got dizzy. The room spun around me. Jennifer? What's wrong? Are the kids okay? The kids are fine. They're asleep. Drew's asleep. Her voice was strange, whispering but urgent. Shaking. I'm in the bathroom. I locked the door. He doesn't know I'm calling. What's going on? I found something. She took a shuddering breath. On Drew's computer. I saw. She stopped. I could hear her breathing. Fast and shallow. Close to hyperventilating. Saw what? Session notes. From his work with me. With the kids. Barbara, it's all there. Everything. The questions he asked. The way he phrased things. The techniques he used. He has a whole protocol written out. Memory recovery techniques for resistant subjects. Guided visualization for trauma access in adult clients. Leveraging childhood suggestibility for narrative reinforcement. Her voice cracked. Mom, he wasn't helping us remember. He was creating memories that weren't there. My whole body went cold. Even though I'd suspected, even though Foster had explained exactly this, hearing Jennifer say it felt different. Real. Are you sure? I'm reading it right now. I've been reading for 2 hours. There's a timeline. It starts from 6 months before you and I even had our first therapy session. He was planning this before he even suggested we needed help, relationship, and gradual memory modification through repeated suggestion. She was crying now, but quietly. The muffled sobs of someone trying not to be heard. There's a section about the kids, Mom, about how children's suggestibility can be therapeutically utilized to reinforce maternal protective responses. He wrote about using Lily's imagination against her, about how Mason's quietness made him an ideal candidate for memory scaffolding. He was using my children, using their trust in him. He was using you, I said, making you think you needed to protect them from me, so you'd turn to him, depend on him. There are recordings. Her voice dropped even lower. Audio files of our sessions. I can hear myself, but I don't remember saying these things. He must have been recording without my consent. I can hear him leading me, Mom, asking questions that already contain the answers, praising me when I agreed with his suggestions, changing the subject when I pushed back. Can you save those files? I'm trying. I'm emailing them to myself right now. Multiple addresses. Downloading to a thumb drive. A pause. Typing sounds. But if he wakes up, if he realizes what I'm doing, he's got copies of everything at his practice office too. He'll delete everything. And I don't even... She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I'm so confused. I can't tell what's real anymore. The memories feel real. They feel like they happened. But they're in his notes, Mom. He wrote down exactly how he created them. You're real. I'm real. This phone call is real. The fact that you're seeing through it now, that's real. I'm so sorry. She was crying harder now, still trying to muffle it. I'm so sorry. The things I said to you at the coffee shop, the things I let him say, the things I let him do to Lily and Mason, we'll deal with all of that later. Right now, you need to get those files somewhere safe. Email them to me. Email them to yourself at every address you have. Download them to anything portable. And Jennifer, slightly. You need to protect those kids. If Drew realizes, if he wakes up and sees what you're doing, I know. A pause. The files are sent. I have to go. I have to delete the sent messages from his computer so he doesn't see the email history. Call me tomorrow. From somewhere he can't hear. Somewhere safe. I will. A long pause. Mom? Yeah? I love you. I'm so sorry. I love you too, sweetheart. I never stopped. The line went dead. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat at my computer in the darkness, refreshing my email every 30 seconds until the files came through at 3:47 a.m. When they did, 7 audio files totaling 3 hours of recordings and 40 pages of detailed session notes in PDF format, I downloaded everything immediately. Then I backed it up. External hard drive. 2 different cloud services. Email to myself. Email to Rachel in Phoenix. Email to Lisa Huang with a subject line in all caps. Urgent. Evidence from Jennifer. Call me immediately. The pages came out slightly crooked. I put them in a manila envelope and addressed it to Lisa's office, then made a second copy and hid it in my fireproof safe. By the time I finished, the sun was coming up. I sat in the gray light of early morning and started reading Drew's notes. It was worse than I'd imagined. So much worse. He documented everything. Every manipulation, every technique, every lie. He'd written it all down in his neat clinical handwriting like a scientist recording an experiment. Session 3. Introduced concept of hidden memories to J. Expressed skepticism initially. Used relaxation techniques to lower defenses. When she achieved light trance state, suggested that childhood felt more complicated than she'd acknowledged. She agreed. First crack in narrative established. Session sept. J. Mentioned mother's occasional temper. Explored extensively. Encouraged elaboration. When she couldn't provide specifics, used guided visualization to help her access buried memories. Became emotional rather than constructing. Memory of being screamed at, now established as factual in her mind. Session 12. J. Expressed doubt about recovered memories. My mom wasn't that bad. Reframed doubt as denial response, common in abuse survivors. Explained that minimizing trauma is a coping mechanism. Accepted this framework. Doubt successfully neutralized. Page after page. Session after session. The systematic dismantling of my daughter's reality. The careful construction of a false history. The isolation from me documented and celebrated. And then the notes about the children. Lily responds well to visualization exercises. Her imaginative capacity makes her highly susceptible to memory scaffolding. Introduced concept of body memories, idea that her body remembers things her mind has forgotten. She accepted this readily. Will continue to build narrative around grandmother's basement. Mason more resistant, quieter, less responsive to direct suggestion. Alternative approach needed. As factual because they come from his sister. Peer reinforcement proving effective. I had to stop reading. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the papers. My grandchildren, my little ones, used like laboratory subjects. Lisa called at 6 a.m., which told me she'd been up reading too. Holy shit, she said without preamble. Barbara, I've been practicing law for 20 years and I've never seen anything like this. He documented his own manipulation protocol. He literally wrote a step-by-step guide to destroying your family. Is it enough? It's enough to destroy him. Professionally, legally, ethically, he's done. This is gross malpractice at minimum. Possible criminal conduct, recording therapy sessions without consent, practicing on family members, deliberately implanting false memories in children. The licensing board will revoke his credentials so fast his head will spin. What about Jennifer? And the kids? That depends on her. She's scared. She doesn't know what's real anymore. He broke something in her, Lisa. Something fundamental. Then we proceed carefully. But Barbara, we have him. Documented his own unethical conduct. He recorded his own manipulation. You can't fake evidence like this. This is his handwriting. His voice on the recordings. His practice letterhead. What do we do now? I'm calling the judge's chambers the minute they open. We're moving for an emergency hearing today. I want those files in the official record before Drew has any chance to destroy evidence. Her voice hardened, and I'm filing a complaint with the state licensing board. Drew Richardson's career is over. The emergency hearing happened that afternoon at 2 p.m. Jennifer didn't come. She'd called Lisa that morning, voice barely audible, saying Drew had noticed she was acting strange at breakfast. She'd told him she had the flu and was staying home with the kids. Keeping them safe, keeping them close. All the files in court. Drew showed up with his attorney, confident and composed in a charcoal suit. He greeted the judge's clerk warmly, shook hands with people in the hallway, played the role of the reasonable professional being unjustly accused. That confidence lasted exactly until Lisa started playing the audio recordings in open court. The courtroom was small, just a judge's chambers expanded for the emergency hearing. Plain wooden chairs, a desk instead of a bench, an American flag in the corner. The kind of room where you'd never expect to hear the sound of a man carefully dismantling a woman's mind. Drew's voice filled the space, tinny through the court speakers, but unmistakable. And when you think back to your childhood, Jennifer, what feelings come up around discipline? I don't know. Normal stuff, I guess. Mom wasn't perfect, but what? What's the but there? I can hear you hesitating. I mean, she had her moments. Every parent does. It wasn't always easy. What kind of moments? Can you describe one for me? I remember one time I got sent to my room for talking back. Was maybe 10? I was probably being a brat. Being a brat. That's interesting. I noticed you're framing it that way. Blaming yourself for normal childhood behavior. I'm not blaming myself. I'm just saying I wasn't perfect either. But you were a child. Children are supposed to test boundaries. That's developmental. The question is how the adult responded. A pause. Jennifer, do you know that self-blame is actually really common in children who've experienced emotional abuse? They internalize the parent's narrative. They learn to see their own normal behavior as bad, as deserving of punishment. I don't think it was abuse. It was just normal punishment. Okay, but sent to your room. You said that. Can you tell me more? Was the door locked? I don't remember. Maybe? I don't think so. It was so long ago. That's okay. Traumatic memories often get fuzzy. The mind protects itself. Let's try something. Close your eyes if it helps. I want you to picture yourself in that room. 10 years old. Your mother has just sent you there. Are you able to leave? I watched Drew's face as his own words echoed through the courtroom. Watched the blood drain from his cheeks. Watched his confident smile falter and die. I don't know. It's fuzzy. Let's try an exercise. I'm going to count down from 5, and as I do, I want you to picture that room. The door, whether it's locked, whether you can get out. Let your mind fill in the details. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What do you see? The door is. I think it might be locked. I'm trying the handle, and it's not opening. I'm pushing, but it won't. Jennifer's recorded voice was uncertain. Suggestible. Being led. I'm scared. I want out, but I can't get out. And how does that make you feel? Scared? No, that doesn't seem right. Why would I be scared of my own room? Maybe because it wasn't a safe space anymore. Maybe because being locked in felt like abandonment, like rejection, like the person who was supposed to love you most was trapping you instead of protecting you. I guess. Yeah, I guess it did. The judge stopped the recording. She was an older woman, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of face that had seen too much to be easily fooled. Mr. Richardson? Is this representative of your therapeutic sessions with Miss Mitchell's daughter? Drew's attorney shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is taken completely out of context. Memory recovery therapy is a legitimate therapeutic modality. Legitimate? Lisa was on her feet, too, her voice cutting. Your Honor, Doctor, Foster's expert report details exactly how discredited and dangerous these techniques are. The academic consensus has been clear for 2 decades. This isn't memory recovery. This is memory implantation. False memories manufactured through leading questions and guided visualization. The judge held up her hand. I've read Dr. Foster's report carefully. I've also read Mr. Richardson's session notes, which Wong has helpfully provided to the court. She picked up a sheaf of papers from her desk, questioning and visualization reinforcement. And here, optimal window for suggestion occurs during relaxation state when critical thinking is reduced. And here, J, beginning to construct false memories independently. Narrative self-sustaining without further intervention required. She looked at Drew. Does your client dispute that these are his notes? Drew's attorney looked at Drew, who'd gone the color of old paper. Grayish. Sick. The mask finally slipping. We'd need time to review them to... They're his notes, the judge said flatly. They're on his practice letterhead, logged in his patient management system, backed up to his professional cloud account. They're date-stamped. They reference specific sessions that match his calendar entries. She set the papers down. Mr. Richardson, do you have anything to say for yourself? Drew stood slowly. His legs seemed unsteady. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. Small, helping my wife process real trauma. If my methods were flawed, if I was overly enthusiastic in my application of certain techniques, your methods weren't flawed, the judge interrupted. Her voice was ice. They were deliberately manipulative. Your notes make that explicitly clear. You systematically implanted false memories in your wife regarding her mother, then extended those techniques to minor children. Children who trusted you, children who called you dad. She shook her head. That's not therapy. That's not a flawed approach. That's abuse. I never intended... Your intentions are documented in 40 pages of session notes. You wrote them down. You recorded them. You knew exactly what you were doing. She turned to me. Her expression softened slightly. Miss Mitchell, I'm granting your petition for immediate visitation rights. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full psychological evaluation of both children by an independent expert with no input from Mr. Richardson. I'm also ordering a forensic review of all of Mr. Determine if there are other victims. Drew made a strangled sound. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the State Licensing Board for immediate review and to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal investigation. Drew's attorney tried to object, sputtering about due process and rushed judgments, but the judge wasn't having it. I'm also issuing a temporary restraining order prohibiting Mr. Richardson from conducting any therapeutic sessions with his wife or stepchildren or having any unsupervised contact with them pending the outcome of these investigations. The gavel came down. The sound echoed through the small room like a gunshot. This hearing is adjourned. Drew stood there, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him like a house of cards in a windstorm. For just a moment, maybe half a second, his mask slipped entirely. I saw rage. Pure, cold rage that he'd been caught, that he'd been outsmarted, that the woman he tried to destroy had destroyed him instead. Then it was gone, replaced by concern. Professional concern. Worried husband concern. Your Honor, I'm deeply worried about my wife's mental state. She's been under tremendous stress and making accusations against me that I believe stem from her own confusion. Your wife isn't here making accusations, the judge said coolly. She's at home with your children, which is probably the safest place for all of them right now. Away from you? She gathered her papers. This court is adjourned. Huang, please provide my clerk with contact information for Mr. Richardson's wife. I'll be issuing a protective order on her behalf as well. Drew's attorney pulled him away, still protesting. Watch them go. Drew looked back once, and his eyes met mine. The hatred there was bottomless. The fury of a predator denied his prey. I held his gaze until he looked away. I didn't see Jennifer for another week. She needed time, she said. Time to sort through what was real and what wasn't. Time to begin to understand what had been done to her. Brother in another county. The children had been told, age, appropriately, that Drew had to go away for a while, that he'd made some mistakes and needed to fix them. Jennifer and I texted carefully during that week. Short messages. Tentative. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know, sweetheart. We'll get through this. I don't know what's real. I keep thinking I remember things, and then I don't know if they're real or if he put them there. We'll figure it out. One day at a time. When she finally called and asked me to come over, her voice was different. Smeller. Exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Can you come? Drew's not here. It's just me and the kids. They've been asking about you. I drove there with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. When Jennifer opened the door, she looked like she'd aged years. Her face was thinner, her eyes hollow and red-rimmed. She was wearing an old college sweatshirt I remembered from years ago, the kind of comfort clothing you reach for when everything else is falling apart. We stood there in the doorway, not touching, the afternoon sun slanting across the porch. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who believed you were a monster and now knows they were made to believe it? Then she started crying, great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body, and I pulled her into my arms. I'm so sorry, she sobbed against my shoulder. I'm so sorry. The things I said to you, the things I let him say, let him take the kids from you, and I let him make me think you were. Shh. I held her tighter. She smelled like the lavender shampoo she'd used since high school. My daughter, me baby, you were a victim. He's a professional. He's trained to do exactly what he did. You weren't supposed to be able to see through it. But the kids, Mom, what he did to Lily and Mason, the things he made them believe. How do I? She couldn't finish. They're resilient. Kids are. And they're getting help now. Real help. I don't know what's real, she said again. Said to me, and they feel so real. My body reacts like they're real. But they're in his notes. He wrote down exactly how he created them. How do I know which memories are mine and which ones he put there? We'll work on that. You have a real therapist now, right? Chen's colleague? She nodded against my shoulder. Then we'll figure it out. Together. However long it takes. Grandma? A small voice from the stairs. Lily, looking down at us with uncertain eyes. Her hair was longer than I remembered. She was wearing pajamas with dinosaurs on them, even though it was afternoon. Is that really you? I looked up at my granddaughter. This child I'd held as a newborn, walked the floors with during colic, taught to count and read and ride a bike. This child who'd been taught to believe I was a monster. It's really me, sweetheart. I'm here. Mason said you might not come back. Her voice was small. Scared? That we'd been bad and made you go away. Jennifer made a choked sound beside me. Baby. No, she said. Bad. You were... She looked at me helplessly. You were confused? I said carefully. And sometimes grown-ups get confused, too. And sometimes people tell us things that aren't true, and it takes a while to figure that out. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Lily flew down the stairs and crashed into me, her thin arms wrapping around my waist. She was shaking. I missed you, she said into my shirt. I missed you so much. I had bad dreams, and you weren't there to make them go away. And I didn't know why you weren't there. I'm here now. I stroked her hair. I'm here. Mason appeared at the top of the stairs. 6 years old and looking even smaller, his thumb in his mouth, a habit he'd broken last year but seemed to have returned to. He watched us with wide, uncertain eyes. Hi, Mason, I said softly. He didn't move. It's okay, buddy, Jennifer said. It's just Grandma. She's not going to hurt you. He flinched at the word hurt, and I saw how much work we still had to do, how deep the damage went. But then, slowly, he started down the stairs, step by step, thumb still in his mouth, eyes never leaving my face. When he reached the bottom, he stopped a few feet away. Grandma? Yeah, buddy. Can we do puzzles? My throat tightened. We can do puzzles anywhere you want. In the basement? Jennifer flinched. I saw the fear flash across her face, the fear that the basement was ruined forever, that Drew had poisoned even that. How about the kitchen table for today? I said. The light's really good there, and we can have snacks while we work. Mason considered this. Then he nodded, satisfied, and walked over to take my hand. His small fingers wrapped around mine, and I felt something in my chest that had been clenched for months finally begin to loosen. I like the dinosaur puzzles, Lily said, still pressed against my side. Can we do the big one with the T-Rex? We can do any puzzle you want. Jennifer watched us, tears still streaming down her face, and for a moment I saw her at 6 years old. Uncertain, scared, looking to me to make things right. I'll get the puzzle box, she said quietly, and went to do it. The independent psychological evaluation took 3 weeks. Sandra Kim, a specialist in childhood trauma and false memory syndrome, met with each child separately, then together, then with Jennifer present. She reviewed all of Drew's session notes, listened to the recordings, interviewed me twice. She was thorough in a way that felt like hope, asking the right questions, taking extensive notes, never leading, never suggesting, just listening. Her report was 42 pages long. I read it 3 times, and each time I found myself crying, not from sadness, but from relief, from vindication. Both children have been subjected to systematic suggestion and leading questions that have created false memories of abuse by their grandmother. The methodology documented in Mr. Richardson's notes matches known techniques for memory implantation, including relaxation induction, guided visualization, and positive reinforcement of suggested narratives. The children's nightmares began only after specific therapeutic interventions by Mr. Richardson, approximately 6 weeks after he began working with them directly. Prior to these sessions, there is no documentation of any sleep disturbances, behavioral concerns, or negative reactions to their grandmother. Their ability to distinguish between actual memories and suggested scenarios is severely compromised, particularly in the case of the older child who was more directly subjected to visualization exercises. In other words, Drew had implanted every terrible thing they thought I'd done. Every nightmare, every fear, every accusation across my kitchen table. All of it manufactured. All of it his creation. The state licensing board moved faster than anyone expected. 3 weeks after the emergency hearing, Drew Richardson's license was suspended pending a full investigation. 2 weeks after that, when the investigation concluded, he was charged with 3 counts of practicing therapy without informed consent and 1 count of child endangerment. His practice closed. His professional reputation was destroyed. Other clients came forward, 2 other women he'd treated who now questioned whether their recovered memories were real. One filed a separate civil suit. His expensive SUV got repossessed. His professional organization expelled him. His brother eventually asked him to leave. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, that I celebrated his destruction, danced on the ashes of his career, felt joy at his downfall. Mostly I just felt tired and sawed and grateful that it was over. Jennifer started seeing Dr. Chen working through the genuine trauma of what Drew had done to her, untangling real memories from implanted ones, processing the violation of having her mind systematically manipulated by someone she'd loved and trusted. Some of the memories feel so real. She told me one afternoon. We were sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Lily had accused me 3 months ago. The afternoon light was golden, and I'd made the same tea I'd made 1,000 times before. Normal, ordinary, healing. I can see myself in my childhood room with the door locked, can feel the panic. I can hear myself crying and pounding on the door. But Dr. Chen says that's what makes implanted memories so insidious. They feel real because Drew taught my brain to construct them as real. He didn't just tell me what to remember. He taught me to create the memories myself. I never locked you in your room, I said quietly. I promise you, Jennifer, I never did that. You had the key to your bedroom from the time you were 12 because you wanted privacy. You could always come and go. I know. Logically, I know. She stirred her tea without drinking. But my body doesn't know. It still reacts like it happened. Sometimes I wake up and for a second I'm 10 years old again, locked in that room, and then I have to remind myself it never happened. That'll get better. With time. With work. I know. She finally looked up, her eyes red. How do I forgive myself for believing him? For what I put you through. I let him do to my children? You were a victim, Jennifer. You were his victim as much as Lily and Mason were. As much as I was. He's the professional. He used his training, his expertise, his position as your husband. He used everything against you. You weren't supposed to be able to see through it. But the kids are resilient, are getting real help, are going to be okay. I reached across the table and took her hand, and they still have you. They still have me. We're all still here. She squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. Do you really forgive me? I thought about the months of exile, the returned cards, phone calls that went to voicemail, the CPS investigation and the court documents and the terrible things I'd read about myself. Nights I'd lain awake wondering if my grandchildren were being taught to hate me. I thought about Jennifer at 5 years old, bringing me dandelions from the backyard. At 15, crying on my shoulder after her first heartbreak. At 30, placing her newborn daughter in my arms and asking me to help her be a good mother. You're my daughter, I said. There was never anything to forgive. Recovery is not a straight line. I learned that over the following months. There were good days and bad days, breakthroughs and setbacks, moments of connection and moments of distance. Lily and I started doing puzzles together again, though we did them at the kitchen table rather than in the basement. She still got anxious when anyone mentioned that room. We didn't push. Slowly, over weeks, she started talking about what Drew had told her. The leading questions, the visualizations, the way he'd praised her when she remembered things and gently corrected her when she didn't. He said you were a bad grandma, she told me one afternoon, fitting a puzzle piece into place. He said you did bad things when Mommy wasn't looking, but I couldn't remember what the bad things were. And he'd say that's okay, sometimes our bodies remember before our minds do. Let's try to listen to your body. And then he'd have me close my eyes and breathe real slow and imagine being in your basement. And what did you imagine? I don't know. Scary stuff. Dark stuff. He'd ask questions like, does it feel scary in the dark? And are you alone or is someone there with you? And after a while it was like, she frowned, trying to explain, like a movie in my head. And I couldn't tell if it was remembering or imagining. It was imagining, I said gently. Drew helped you imagine things that never happened. I know. She looked up at me with her mother's eyes. But it felt real. It still feels kind of real sometimes. That's okay. Feelings can lie sometimes. That's why we check them against the fact. What are the facts? The fact is that I love you. The fact is that I've loved you since the day you were born. The fact is that I never hurt you, never scared you, never did anything but try to be the best grandma I could be. Those are facts you can check. She nodded slowly. Then she reached over and patted my hand. I know, Grandma. I'm remembering the real stuff now. Mason was slower to come around. Affected, less able to articulate what had happened to him. Was in play therapy now, working with a child psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery. But he started calling me Grandma again instead of Barbara. Drew had insisted they use my first name, another way of stripping our relationship of its meaning. And he started sitting next to me on the couch during movie nights. And once, about 2 months after the hearing, he crawled into my lap without asking and fell asleep there, his breathing slow and even, his trust so complete it broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Jennifer got an annulment. Turned out you could void a marriage based on fraud when your spouse was actively manipulating your mind the entire time. The paperwork took months, but eventually it was done. Drew pleaded no contest to the charges and lost his license permanently. He avoided jail time, barely, but his career was over, his reputation destroyed. Last I heard, he'd left the state, selling insurance somewhere in the Midwest, starting over. I hoped he'd never hurt anyone again. I didn't count on it. Jennifer started dating again eventually. A high school history teacher named Paul, someone kind and uncomplicated who had his own therapist and would never dream of treating his partner as a patient. He was nervous the first time Jennifer brought him to meet me. I made pot roast and asked him about his students and watched the way he looked at my daughter. With love, yes, but also respect. As an equal, as a person. He was good with Lily and Mason, too. Passion. Never pushing. Let them come to him at their own pace. He's not trying to be their dad, Jennifer told me. He says they already have a dad, even if their dad is what he is. Paul just wants to be their friend. Maybe, someday, something more. But only if they want it. That sounds healthy. Yeah, she smiled. Healthy? I'm learning what that actually looks like. It's been 2 years now since Lily accused me across my kitchen table. Came back together. The kids are 10 and 8 now. Lily's into horses instead of dinosaurs, and Mason's discovered a passion for building things. Legos, models, anything he can put together with his hands. They sleep through the night most of the time. The nightmares have faded. The false memories are still there, according to their therapist, but they're learning to recognize them as false, learning to check their feelings against facts, do puzzles in the basement again. It took almost a year, but Lily finally asked if we could, said she wanted to take the scary place back, make it hers again instead of Drew's. We went down together, all of us, Jennifer, Lily, Mason, and the kids, looked around at the finished space, the couch and the art supplies and the shelves of puzzles and games, and something shifted in their faces. It's just a basement, Mason said, sounding surprised. Yeah, buddy, it's just a basement. I like it, Lily said. Can we do the horse puzzle down here? We can do any puzzle you want. I still see Dr. Chen sometimes. We talk about trust, about rebuilding it, about the scars that remain even after wounds heal, about how some violations can't be undone, only integrated into who you become. You know what strikes me, she said in our last session, is that you never really doubted yourself. Even when everyone else did, your daughter, your grandchildren, CPS, the court system, you knew the truth. I had to, I said. If I'd started doubting myself, Drew would have won. The truth was all I had, she smiled. The truth and stubbornness. Well, I come by that honestly. My mother was stubborn too. Guess some things run in families. Last week, Lily asked if she could interview me for a school project about family history. We sat in my living room, the same living room where I'd cried after Jennifer first cut me off, where I'd watched videos of happier times, where I'd felt the walls closing in during the darkest months. Now it was just a room, my room, full of photos of my grandchildren at various ages, growing up despite everything. Lily had a worksheet with questions about family traditions and values and lessons learned. She took the assignment very seriously, sitting cross-legged on the couch with a pencil and note. What's the most important thing you've learned in life, Grandma? I thought about it. About Drew and his carefully documented deceptions, about Jennifer's tortured confusion, about Mason's hesitant trust and Lily's rebuilt confidence, about the months I'd spent in exile from my own family, wondering if I'd ever get them back, about the truth and what it costs to protect it, and what it costs to lose it. That love isn't enough by itself, I said finally. You also need honesty and courage. And sometimes you need proof, I paused. But mostly, you need to know who you are. Really know it deep down, so that nobody can convince you you're someone else. Lily wrote it down carefully in her notebook, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration the way it had since she was 3. Is that about what Drew did? Jennifer and I had been honest with the kids. Age, appropriately. They knew Drew had confused them, that the scary memories weren't real, that he'd been sick in a way that made him hurt people instead of help them. They were in therapy themselves, learning to rebuild their sense of what was true. Yeah, honey, it's about what Drew did. I'm glad you didn't give up on us, she said, looking up from her notebook. Even when we believed the wrong things, I'm glad I didn't either. She put her worksheet aside and curled up next to me on the couch, fitting herself under my arm like she used to when she was small. We sat there while afternoon light filtered through the windows, golden and warm, and I thought about all the afternoons I'd thought I'd lost forever. Some of them were lost. Mason's 6th birthday happened. Without Lily lost 2 teeth I didn't see. There are gaps in their childhood I'll never fill, memories I'll never share, moments I'll never get back. But this moment right now, restored? This was real. This was mine. And nobody, not even someone with all the right credentials and all the wrong intentions, not even someone trained to manipulate and deceive, could take that away again. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. I know it wasn't an easy one to hear. Some nights, it still isn't easy for me to remember. I wake sometimes with my heart pounding, dream fragments of those terrible months still clinging to my mind. But I'm learning to let them go, to focus on what's real, what's here, what's mine. Maybe you've had your own experience with someone who rewrote reality, who made you question what you knew was true, who used your love against you, your trust as a weapon. Maybe you're sitting with your own complicated family story right now, wondering what's real and what's been painted over. Wondering if you can trust your own memories, your own perceptions, your own heart. I don't have easy answers. I wish I did. A question you can ask that will make everything clear. But I can tell you this. Truth has weight to it. Even when it's buried, even when it's denied, even when someone with training and authority and apparent love tells you that up is down and the sky is green and the grandmother who's loved you all your life is actually a monster. The truth is still there, underneath, waiting. And sometimes the hardest thing and the most important thing are exactly the same. Refusing to let someone else tell you who you are. We're rebuilding here, my daughter and my grandchildren and me. Stone by stone, day by day. Some days are better than others. Some days we stumble back into old fears, old doubts, old shadows that Drew cast across our family. But we're building on solid ground now, not on convenient fictions, not on manufactured memories, not on someone else's version of who we're supposed to be. The truth, solid as bedrock, ours to stand on. And that, I'm learning, is enough.